Hello, horse lovers. Welcome to A Horse of Course, where we talk about everything horses. And I've said in other videos that I don't like to do series where you have to either read every book or see every episode in order to know what's going on. If you have to watch them all in order, it just takes too much to make a review out of that. As much as I enjoy reading and watching these stories, you could make a video per episode or per book in some of those cases. Luckily, when it comes to the Saddle Club, you can watch them or read them in any order and you'll still basically get what's going on. But I wanted to talk about three specific episodes of the Saddle Club today. In the original run of the series, they were called Foster Horse, parts 1, 2, and 3, and they were later re released as a movie called Storm at Pine Hollow. Now, to make the movie, they did some creative editing, putting parts of different episodes in with the original three episodes, but I'll talk about that later on. But the reason I wanted to talk about these episodes is the main horse in it, Storm. Now, we've seen a million and one stories. If you're like me, you've seen a million and one stories where there's an abused horse who gets rehabilitated. And even though this is done over and over again, we keep coming back to these stories because they tug at the heartstrings. You can't help caring about these kind of horses, wanting them to have better lives. And I saw these episodes long before I ever knew I would have a horse of my own or what that horse's history would be. And rewatching them, I can't help but think a lot about my own horse. Now, these episodes are tragically inaccurate in how they portray what needs to be done to take on the rehabilitation of this kind of horse. The horsemanship in it is just so far off base that these episodes should almost come with a warning label of don't try this with your own horse. And yet, there is a lot of good in this episode. There are a lot of good things to talk about in it. So let's get started with talking about Storm at Pine Hollow. It starts out shortly after the owner of the stables, Max Regnery, has gone to get further training so he can make the stables a little more profitable, do a little bit better at running them. And his cousin Drew is currently in charge. Well, before Max left, he gave permission for Lisa to take on a foster horse. Now, Lisa is an interesting choice for who's going to be the center of this episode. The Saddle Club, as I mentioned before in other videos, consists of Lisa, Stevie, and Carol. Lisa is the newest, least experienced rider, although by this point she does have a fair amount of knowledge to work with. But she would not have been who I would have chosen to center this episode around. But in any case, she does have a lot of determination and a lot of heart. And when she first sees Storm, the images we get of him are almost something like out of a horror movie.
What about this one?
Storm. That gelding's been so badly abused that he hasn't responded to rehabilitation. It's a real shame. He used to be a prize ranch horse before he was sold to his last owner, who's now up on cruelty charges.
Then what's going to happen to him?
I'm afraid we've done all that we can do. He's scheduled to be put down next week when the vet arrives.
And this is the first inaccuracy, right at the beginning. No shelter is going to let anybody take any animal on, whether foster or permanent, if they have been labeled dangerous like this. The shelter is not going to want to get sued if somebody gets hurt. They don't want somebody to get hurt even if they wouldn't get sued. And they're not going to want other people hearing about an animal like this hurting somebody and them getting a reputation for not having the kind of animals that people would want to adopt. Lisa asked Red, who is the main stable hand at Pine Hollow, to take on this horse with her. Again, this would never happen in real life. But of course, we're not dealing with real life. So Storm is brought to Pine Hollow, and nobody there shares Lisa's enthusiasm.
Isn't he beautiful?
Even though she's the only one who believes in Storm, Lisa still lets herself daydream about him. And I actually really love the visuals in the scene where she imagines what it would be like if Storm was her horse, and she sees the future that he can have. While it's not realistic, it is beautiful to watch, and you can just feel how much Lisa would love to have him as her own. In her excitement, Lisa goes to talk to Stevie and Carol, and they basically throw a bucket of cold water on her imaginings and her dreams. Not to be cruel, but
Can't wait to get him started. But Red says that we need to let him settle down a little bit first. A little bit? I can already picture it. By the time we're done, there'll be a lineup a mile long of people wanting to adopt him. Aren't you getting a little ahead of yourself, Lisa? All I need is to gain his trust, and he'll be ready to adopt in no time. Are you sure you're up for it, Lisa? I mean, Storm's been through a lot.
now this is something that this movie gets both right and wrong. Stevie and Carol are absolutely right to say that this is not something that Lisa should be taking on by herself. Yes, abused horses can be rehabilitated. My own horse, Bucky, has come an amazing long way. And I am no expert, but the reason I succeeded was because Bucky did not become violent. Through some miracle, after all that he's been through, he became spooky. He became afraid of everything. But he never ever has reared up, kicked, bitten, acted at all like Storm here. Had he acted like Storm acted, I would never have taken that on. Unfortunately, two horses from the same stable Bucky came from did act like that. And I'll probably never know how they turned out. All I can do is hope that they ended up through some miracle, ending up with some expert who would know how to rehabilitate them. Because it is nowhere near as easy as simply gain their trust. Of course, that's something you gotta do. You have to have the horse trust you. But that is not that simple of a thing to do. Now, they get this right by pointing out that's not that simple, and yet later on, they have it seem like every other horse story out there where they make it look like it is that easy. Now, that being said, this is not meant to be a realistic story. It's not a documentary. And there is something about this that rubs me the wrong way. The two rules of the Saddle Club are you have to be horse crazy and you have to be willing to help each other. Nowhere in this whole movie do Stevie and Carol even interact with Storm, which I really would have liked this better if they had worked together to help him. Well, there's one person who will definitely not be helping, and that's Veronica D'Angelo. She is the typical spoiled rich girl who owns the $1 million horse and who thinks that everybody owes her everything because she's rich. And she doesn't help Storm at all.
Understand what Lisa sees in that thing.
Yeah, let's take something that looks like a whip at a horse that's been abused. That's not going to make him react worse at all, right? Well, Veronica has a lot of changing to do, and it's not all going to take place within the course of these episodes. But she does kick off the Saddle Club finding out about another problem. She goes to put back her saddle, and the rack that it's stored on breaks. She doesn't even care, leaves it broken, walks off, and that's when Drew, who, like I said, is currently running the stables, comes in and tells her, hey, we're short on money here. Well, he doesn't put it in that way. He says, do you know what one of these things costs to fix? Go set this right. Well, the Saddle Club has never seen Drew act like this before. And Stevie and Carol decide to go into his office and tidy up a little bit and see if maybe that can help him see what needs to be done and maybe be of some use to him. Well, this brings us to the scene that every horse movie, every horse book, every horse series has to have, where somebody finds out the stable is going broke. Yes, horses are expensive, but do we really have to have a scene like this in every horse story?
What is it? It's the bank. Max took out some big loans, and now they want to be paid back. Well, Pine Hollow's broke.
Pine Hollow might have money worries, but if there's one person who doesn't worry about money, it's Veronica D'Angelo. And of course, she's not very likely to help. In fact, in true Veronica style, she tries to get everybody to do her work for her. This includes Scooter, who's a friend of the Saddle Club. Scooter has pretty much nothing to do with horses. He doesn't ride. He works at a local ice cream shop where the girls like to stop for a treat now and again. But he does have a way of interacting with Veronica.
Is Garnet's stall clean yet?
Search me.
Well, did you clean it?
Did you want me to clean it?
I shouldn't have to ask.
I'll do it if you want me to.
It should be done automatically.
Automatically? No, I don't think I've got a switch for that.
In future episodes not included in this movie, we do see a lot more Veronica and Scooter together, and it is clear that they are going to develop feelings for each other. He already feels that way about her, but it's going to take a little bit longer on her end. But that's not the main focus of this story, of course. We're talking about Storm. And There's a beautiful moment in this movie. It's got some very great music behind it. All of the Saddle Club members, all of the actors who play them, are great singers, and they did actually release a few CDs of music that they made for the show. And there's a song dedicated to Storm, and they play it in the background. They don't play it, but I mean, it plays in the background while Lisa interacts with them. And she makes a bit of a breakthrough, offering them something he can't refuse: carrots.
Wherever you find your home, you can take us with you. Ah, you like those. There's a place within our hearts, and you'll always be there. You're a warrior far under.
We don't see as much of the Saddle Club together in this movie as we would see in a lot of the episodes, in the vast majority of the episodes. But they do come together to try to find a solution to Pine Hollow's money problems. Like I said, they're all great singers, and their answer is to try to put on a benefit concert, or at least do a performance that they can earn some money for. And they go to Scooter for help with that. Bit of a mistake here. They mention that he worked with them before on their blossoming, I guess you could say, music career. This never happened in any of the episodes. We have no previous episode that showed them singing together, or even trying to. But for some reason, they mentioned that.
Had to start somewhere. You don't begin with a platinum album and $40 million.
Then what are we looking at? Like our last gig? Here? We got nothing.
You got exposure, and exposure is very important in the beginning.
Lisa's going to help them out with the performance, but naturally she's more focused on Storm. And we get another nice moment between her and Storm, where he finally takes a carrot from her hand, which is a major breakthrough considering he wouldn't come close enough to take it before. It's soon after this that Red starts to help Lisa with Storm. This is where things get even more unrealistic. He's not able to rope Storm. They try roping him, and I didn't understand why at first. I'll get more into that in just a bit. But they try to get a rope around his neck, and they're not able to. Finally, Red tells Lisa, "You go in and you try to put the rope on him." Lisa actually takes a step back and falls over in fear, which not a good thing to do. If you're that afraid, if you're that nervous, don't even try it because the horse is going to pick up on that. But she does overcome it, and she gets up, and she does manage to get the rope around him.
Hello, Storm.
This scene looks like they're doing a great job with Storm. If you don't happen to know that much about horses, if you just happen to know a little bit about them from TV shows and books, but if you've actually ever lunged a horse, this is insane. Apparently, the reason they wanted to put the rope around Storm's neck was to lunge him, get him to circle them at different what horse people refer to as gaits, walk, trot, canter. You don't put a rope around the horse's neck to do that. It's best done either with a halter and a lead line clipped on, and if you can't get the halter on him, if they're trying to lunge him, you can do what's called free lunging, which is getting the horse to circle you with no line attached. I've done that with Bucky 1,000,001 times. It is not difficult to do, to get a horse to move without the lead line on, or a rope, or anything else. In fact, keeping him circling them without a line would have been the first step in join up, which I will talk about in another video. But just to explain what I'm talking about, join up is using a horse's own natural body language to build a connection with them. And you start by sending the horse away from you in a circle. So they could have started with that. They could have included real horsemanship here, but no. They decided to go for the idea that you have to have the rope around the horse's neck lasso style in order to lunge him. And it gets even more ridiculous when they make like they're asking him to switch from a trot to a canter. What he actually does is switch from a canter to a trot.
Okay, Lisa, now try and get him to change his gait. Remember, it's all about tone. As you ask for the transition, step towards his hind end to push him forward.
And canter! Good boy. You're doing it.
Now, even though this is shown way incorrectly, they've actually gotten Storm from where you couldn't go near him to where they are lunging him within a very short time span. This is mind-blowingly amazing. This would be an excellent time to stop, praise him, tell him he's the best horse in the world, pet him, give him treats, just love on him, and end on a really good note. Even more impressive, they've gotten him lunging, swinging the rope at him when he has obviously been hit before. Clearly, Lisa isn't actually going to hit him, but this is a horse who is deathly afraid of whips. Anything that would resemble the movement of a whip. We saw how he reacted to Veronica before with just a lead line in her hand. This is spectacular. For him to have come this far. You don't want to introduce something that he is afraid of. He's going to think it's a punishment. But no, Red gets the idea. This is a good time to get him used to having a whip around.
He needs to know that.
This is when Red gives up on Storm completely, saying he's just too dangerous. Now, Storm is not recovered at this point by a long shot. But like I said, this was Red's stupidity by showing him the whip. There was no reason at all to bring the whip into the picture. In Storm's mind, he was going to be punished for doing what the humans asked him to do. Which, how unfair could that be? So, Red's decision here, I can see him wanting to make sure Storm doesn't hurt anybody. But bottom line, he should not have shown Storm the whip. If he wanted to get Storm used to it gradually and eventually, I can see that because you never know when somebody's going to go past holding a whip in their hand and you don't want Storm to freak out at that. But this was absolutely not the time. He's just started to begin to let people work with him. And like I said, he came a long way in a very short time already. So this was just simply a question of doing the very wrong thing at the very wrong time. And Red says he's going back to the shelter, we're done. And we have a very touching moment where Lisa goes to see him the next day.
You're a good horse with a good heart. I know that. It's obvious to me. How just drive such a good horse. It's because of what those cruel people have done to you. You go a little wild now and then, with enough love. All those bad memories will fade away.
That particular scene has personal meaning for me. I was working with Bucky to get him ready for our first show together, which ended up also being our last show together. I did enter him in a driving class, and I thought that I needed help from somebody who had first taught me to drive. Well, I had not realized how strongly Bucky associated this person with his former owner, which I should have guessed because they used to work together. And Bucky just had too many bad memories, and when we practiced before the fair, he spooked. I could not control him. Our drive that we had under with this person watching was a nightmare. And it was like he was back to being the pony that I first thought of him as. And I showed this scene to my sister Rue, and she told me, yeah, with enough love, all those memories will fade away, but you can't keep giving him reminders of the past. You just brought all of that back. And she was absolutely right. I had just given Bucky a mental trip right back to where he used to be. And even though he seemed to be in a good mindset again by fair time, he simply did not enjoy the whole experience. And I said, I'm never going to put him through that again. If I'd realized how bad it would be, I would never have put him through that the first time. But Bucky has had a lot of moments where he did show fear, where he'd spook, and it's taken a lot to get him past that. And I know he'll still continue to progress, but I'm never going to give him a reminder of what he's been through again. Well, meanwhile, Pine Hollow is still having financial troubles. And the solution that's been brought up a couple times is to sell the land that contains the riding trails. Now, in most movies where somebody's got financial problems, the banker's portrayed as the bad guy. In this case, the banker is actually a very nice man. He's just doing what he has to do, and it's clear he doesn't like it. And you can tell from this clip he really does care about seeing Pine Hollow succeed, and he wishes things were different.
Over the years, I wish I'd done the same. I was more at home on a horse's back than I ever was in any business suit. But the bank, that was in my family for generations.
As much as he wishes he could help, the only answer anybody can come up with is selling the land with the trails. But the answer to Storm's problem is simply to not give up on him. And after a talk with Mrs. Regnery, the mother of Max, who actually owns the stable, Red comes around and decides, okay, we'll try one more thing with Storm.
My guess is he has every reason to fear us.
He's worse with men.
The only way to truly conquer that fear would be to prove to him once and for all that we're not going to harm him, even when he's vulnerable.
Does that mean you'll try?
That means we'll try.
Thank you.
I love how Storm is nuzzling Lisa through this, and you can tell he does love her. You know, he's not just out to hurt people. He's been hurt himself. And given the chance, he can recover. Although, like I said, please do not attempt this in real life unless you really know what you're doing. One thing I don't get though, she mentions that Storm is worse with men. How does she know that? Red is the only man who's ever actually interacted with him besides her. He's better with her, but how can she say men in general? Maybe she's right. And there's a good chance she is, because there are a lot of horses who will only tolerate a woman rider. There are also horses who will only tolerate a man. So it is possible, but I wouldn't say there's enough evidence to say one way or the other. Anyway, remember I mentioned that Scooter and Veronica have been talking. They've been growing closer throughout the series, and their communications get really interesting. Well, Scooter has an idea to get Veronica to actually help out.
Somebody like you would be good at running Pine Hollow.
Well, I don't think I'd be a very popular choice.
Well, that's just because people are jealous of you.
Well, why do you say that?
Well, people are jealous because they want to be like you. Even I wouldn't mind.
You're a strange one, Scooter.
I wouldn't say giving Veronica any kind of a position of power is a good idea, but at least it would solve the problem for now and get Pine Hollow the money that it needs. Speaking of speaking of solutions that wouldn't really solve the problem, Red's idea with Storm is to get him in an extremely vulnerable position by basically using ropes to force him to lay down, and then running a rope over him to show him, see, this doesn't hurt. Have the people who wrote this show ever actually worked with a horse? Not gonna work. All this would actually do would be freak him out. He's not gonna learn, especially not for just one time, of having a rope run over him. Oh, this doesn't hurt. It takes a long time exposing a horse to something to get them past that fear. Like I said, I know that from working with Bucky. I've known when he used to freak out at a pool noodle, which is a common thing you use to desensitize a horse to things that they would be afraid of. The first time he saw a blue pool noodle specifically, he jumped up in the air like somebody held a gun on him. And it wasn't a case of touching him with it and showing him, oh, this doesn't hurt. It took him a long time to get past that. So, yeah, this would not ever work in real life.
Good. Now, very gently, brush the lariat along his side.
Easy, Storm. I won't hurt you.
Okay. Whoa.
At least for the sake of the movie, it works, and Storm gets the second chance he deserves. One problem with this movie, besides it being unrealistic, it has a lot of subplots. some of these subplots involve two younger riders at Pine Hollow getting into all kinds of trouble. Really has no effect on the movie at all. There's them accidentally letting letting their two pet guinea pigs breed and produce a litter, and some of the baby guinea pigs are obviously stuffed toys. There's the two younger riders taking off on a horse that's known to run away with its riders and them getting into trouble. There's them going into debt at the ice cream place because they think they've won money on a scratch card when they've only really won $2 because they didn't know about something called a decimal point. So you've got all that going on. Like I said, way too many subplots. But one subplot that is important is of course Pine Hollow needed money, and the Saddle Club had their singing arrangement to help pay for it. Well, to add in some humor to this, it turns out they're not getting paid the way they thought.
You know how I told you the event in Sweetwater Mall was to launch a new line of dog food?
Yes. Go on. Oh no. We're getting paid in dog food?
It's not just any dog food. It's got 9 essential vitamins and minerals in it.
So, should I go and unload the other 200 boxes then?
It's a lucky thing Veronica convinces your dad to donate to Pine Hollow, because I don't think the dog food would be any help. It never does say what they do with all the dog food. I'm hoping they donate it to the shelter that Storm came from. I mean, that would be the most practical use for it, since we don't see any of the Saddle Club members actually having a dog. Why not put it to good use? Well, Veronica helped out with the money, but she does tease Lisa, saying, "You could never have turned Storm around on your own. This was all Red's doing." Lisa wants to prove her wrong and decides to take Storm out for a walk. Storm is easy to handle now. You know, he's not going to be a problem to take for a walk. But in one of the dumbest scenes ever, Lisa trips over a low log because she's walking backwards, leading Storm, and knocks herself out. Seriously. And the fall they show should not have been that bad. Storm decides to help her out by flagging Red down. At first, Red thinks that Storm turned on Lisa, but he does realize that Storm was actually trying to protect her.
Are you alright? What did he do? Did Storm turn on you?
I know her, Red. I just went for a gentle walk. And I tripped and fell.
Storm reared up at me. He was protecting you. It's alright, Storm. You're a good horse.
Storm and Lisa clearly share a strong bond. But now, one thing that I really don't like is the way that this ends. It ends happily for Storm. It turns out that the banker adopts him, wants to get back into horses. And it's clearly going to be a happy life for Storm. The guy's a nice guy, he'll take good care of him. But I really seriously wish that Storm would have ended up with Lisa. After all that Lisa's learned since the start of the series, she's clearly ready for her own horse. She and Storm have a connection. I really would have liked to have seen her finally get her own horse. And that's something that never happens in either the TV series or the book series. Her favorite horse to ride in lessons is Prancer, but seriously, I think she should have had Storm. But at least he does go to a happy place.
You are a beautiful boy, eh? Hey? Come here. Yes, what a lovely animal. Hmm?
He's up for adoption from the shelter.
Is he now? You know, I got a farm not 10 minutes from here, and it's been vacant for far too long. It needs a fair bit of work, and I could do with a good horse to give me a hand. Do you think that Storm would like that?
I think he would love it.
Everybody loves a happy ending. And I have to say, I have mixed feelings about this movie. It is far from realistic. The horsemanship they show in here is laughably or tragically inaccurate, however you want to look at it. But you can't help caring about Storm. I think that's why this kind of story is so enduring and why there's so many stories like it, where an abused horse gets rehabilitated, a wild horse gets tamed. We love seeing that connection form. We love seeing a horse that's gone through pain find their way back to recovery because it gives hope. It, you know, it's weird to think about that sad stories can be uplifting as long as they have a happy turnout. And this ends with us knowing that Storm's gonna be okay. So, realistic or not, it does tug at the heartstrings, and it does, like I said, remind me a lot of my own horse. So, overall, I enjoyed this movie. If you get to see it, I hope you like it too. And until next time, keep riding.